Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Marupena Sanstitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Shakti Rupena Sanstitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Buddhi Rupena Sanstitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Lakshmi Rupena Sanstitaha Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. So, anybody remember what verse we're on? I think we're still in the 6th. Did we finish the 6th chapter on Shraddha?
Yeah, we did. We're starting chapter 7.
So tonight we begin chapter 7. And Punit, will you help us out?
Chapter 7. Iti Himalekha Bhartra Priya Tarena Sa Provacha Vidushi Samyag Vigyat Loka Sanstitihi. That wise Himalekha, who had known the state of worldly life well, thus asked by her very dear husband, spoke.
Going on.
Shrinu Vrakshye Priyatam Sthira Swanta Samadarat Manohi Markata Prayam Asthiram Sarvadaivatat. Most beloved, I shall tell you, listen with care and with a steady mind. Mind is indeed like a monkey. It is quite unsteady always.
So what we're doing is we're going back and she's going to help us out by explaining to Hemachuda the import of the allegory. And she again says the mind is unsteady. Note that she uses the name of mind that she used in her allegory, Astira. So let's see again how she furthers the exposition. Going on. Before we go on, one more thing. Frequently, people will come to class and they will ask to take notes. And what I've been told is currently in the Chinmaya mission now, people take notes. Swamiji would not let us take notes because he wanted us to listen carefully with a focused mind. Excuse me. You don't want to be distracted. If you're taking notes, your mind is always kind of behind because you're writing down stuff. You're not totally present. Ideally, in satsang, we put you into an experience where you're getting the direct experience of your self-nature. And we tell you what you're experiencing while you're experiencing it. This is when the jnanam and the vijnanam come together. This is why this path of Vedanta is also called a Shabda Pramana. It's a means of knowledge through the words themselves. Now, with Zoom, everything is different. But that's one of the reasons why she's saying this at the beginning of the chapter. She wants the totality of Achyuta's attention, nothing distracting him, and she's now going to tell him what's going on. Any thoughts or questions about this? Next verse.
Yat evam mahanat nartham praptavan prakrito janah chalan mana sarva dukkha adanam drishtameva hi yata sushuptau chalanabhav advindati vai sukham. Since it is thus, the common man has met with great calamity. It has indeed been seen that a moving or fickle mind alone is the primary cause of all sorrow, since a person indeed obtains happiness in deep sleep on account of the absence of movement of the mind.
Yes. So, what he's saying here is when the mind is unsteady, it's subject to a fundamental delusion. What is that delusion? It is rooted in the non-apprehension of our essential nature and a subsequent misapprehension. The root of it is I think I'm a person. I think I'm my body. From that stems the whole cycle of births and deaths, the sorrows of worldly existence. And we can only really clearly engage in effective vichara, self-inquiry, with a clear, focused, and steady mind. Going on.
Tasman mana sthira kritya shrinuyatte bravimyaham anadaren shrutam cha bhavet shruta samittatam aphalam syatad yantam yatha chitra tarashrayah. Therefore, make the mind immovable. Hear what I tell you. What has been heard with disregard would be equal to what is not heard. It would be extremely fruitless having recourse to a tree in a picture.
What did you say?
It would be extremely fruitless like having...
I was demonstrating the point. If your mind is elsewhere, you can't hear it. So it's very difficult for us to be able to hear the teaching with single-pointed attention. Totally attentive to the teaching when it's happening. Now, truth is, many of us lose our single-pointed attention, and our minds wander. Ego's defensive strategies start to arise and they get in the way. So the good news is the Vedanta is incredibly repetitive. So if you miss something, don't worry. It will come around again. But if you really tune up the mind and listen carefully, this work is very subtle. It takes a subtle mind to go, aha, yes, I see what the teacher's talking about. Next one.
Anavastita tarkam tam apahaya vinashanam sattakar shritya janaha prapnuyat sufulam duritam. Warding off that destructive reasoning which is unsettled without finality and resorting to proper reasoning, a man can attain to good result quickly.
So we don't want to get caught up in fallacious reasoning or false reasoning. Remember, she ended up with the story of Sunga, the proponent of the Shunyavadins, who came along and confused these Brahmanas who were studying. And then the teacher comes back and he straightens out their thinking. Listen carefully. I'm going to straighten out your thinking. So it's easy for us to get involved in fallacious argument. And part of the problem is people think if I read enough commentaries, I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. It is not figure-outable. In Shankara's very famous discourse on the qualifications of a fit student, the third one is Shamadhi Guna, qualities of Shama, etc. And the last one in that third group is Samadhana, that peaceful state of mind when it rests in steady contemplation of the goal. And it's not to be achieved by any amount of oscillation of the mind. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? Is it? Are there 3 bodies? Are there 5 bodies? What's the difference between the Annamaya Kosha and the gross body? You know, we try to figure stuff out like we're gonna collect data. It's not like studying a worldly science. Vedanta is a non-intellectual path for intellectuals. We teach you a way of thinking to get out of your thinking. Bring the mind to a still point. Next verse.
Sattarka sanshrayenashu sadhaneka paro bhavet sattarka jatinam shraddham prapye ha phalabhagnaraha. By resorting to proper reasoning, let one become solely devoted to spiritual fulfillment alone. Man would be the enjoyer of the fruit here, having obtained faith produced by proper reasoning.
So he's Sattarka. Tarka is not only reasoning, but argument, logic, you see. So the way in which the Upanishads work with us is they ask us to apply our reasoning faculty to clearly analyze our direct experience. Let me give you an example. Can you all see the water glass? Yeah. Are you a water glass? No. How do you know that? I'm the one who sees the water glass. There's a subject-object relationship. Oh, okay. We've gone through a tarka, we've gone through a mode of reasoning. That's pretty obvious. But we go to the body. When you were a child, you had a little body. You went through adolescence, the body changed. You're an adult, the body is changed again. Are you not aware of the changes in the body? Take a deep breath. Do you not know the body in the same way you know the water glass? It's an object of cognition. What we're using here is satarka, proper reasoning, reasoning about the truth. Now, when we go to the subtlest, can you see the rise and the fall of the ego? Can you see the presence and the absence of thought? Who is it who knows the rise and fall of the ego and the presence and the absence of thought? In a quiet mind, a still mind, who are you? This kind of meditation, satarka. Going on, next one.
Anavasthita tarkam tam vihaya lokaya priya pravritti me tam jagatah shraddhaya shalinim. Dear, look at this activity or conduct of the world, which is fruitful on account of faith, abandoning that unsettled reasoning without finality.
So again, you look at the world, everything is accomplished by having proper faith, and people reason things out. Yesterday, I was able to flip on the light switch and turn on the lights. I'm seeing a little square box. Am I still online?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Today, I have faith. I'm using reasoning. I expect that if I flip the light switch, the light will go on again. Everything in the world happens through faith and proper reasoning. Next verse.
Sutarkitena kalena karshaka shmam vikarshati shraddhayeva tatharupya swarna ratnaushidhadikam vyavastanti sutakarna tyaktva tarkanavasthitim. A farmer plows the field at some time which is properly reasoned out. So also, by faith alone, people seek or strive for silver, gold, precious stones, medicines, and the like through proper reasoning, abandoning the unsettled condition of improper reasoning.
Yes. So it's not just blind faith. It's faith that's informed by proper reasoning. To be able to catch the subtle import of the teaching in the scriptures. And most importantly, to be able to reason this out. Focused mind. To come to experience it directly ourselves. Next verse.
Tasmat sutarka shraddhyabham yavasya shreya atmanah प्रयतेत sadhanaya nahi tarkanavasthitaihi viramet paurushad yatnat shunganugarana iva. Therefore, seeking the highest good of oneself through proper reasoning and faith, let one strive for spiritual fulfillment. Let not one cease at all from manly effort like the men following Shunga on account of the unsettled condition of improper reasoning.
Yes. So you don't want to fall into the nihilism of the scholiasts of the void. The lip Vedantans are getting caught in what I call the Vedanta logic loop. It's all an illusion, so none of it matters. Why should I bother? Striving hard for self-realization. Self-realization is, nothing is real. Why should I bother to do anything? No! Follow the logic as it's set forth in the scripture. And we have to apply purushartha, self-effort. We need mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation, which impels us into self-effort. What about God's grace? Doesn't it happen by God's grace, Guru's grace? We invoke God's grace by our self-effort. I love the Zen proverb. Enlightenment happens by accident. Zen makes you accident prone. Self-realization will come suddenly. You either see it or you don't. But our efforts are of value. Strive hard for liberation. I tell people frequently, self-realization is not difficult. You don't have to have a high IQ. You don't have to be especially gifted. But it's incredibly rare. And the reason it's rare is nobody wants it. People want the world. And they're told, give up your attachments to the world. I have a kingdom that's greater. I'll give you the pearl of great price, the chintamani. Oh, maybe. I'll stick with drugs, sex, and rock and roll. That I know. So we have to have the yoga balam, personal fortitude, to be able to say, I'm going to give this a real shot. See what happens. See what happens. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Shraddhaya parushaparo na vihanyeta sarvatha dridam paurasham ashritya na prapyeta katham phalam. One who is devoted to manly effort with faith cannot be frustrated at all. Resorting to firm manly effort, how can the fruit thereof not be obtained?
So the translator, this has been a little bit non-gender exclusive. The root is purusha, which means a person. So it means a woman too. So resorting to great human effort, I think would be a better way for us to translate it in less gender specific language. But everything comes from that. Being a great musician, being a scientist, learning a language, all of it. We have to put in work. Next verse.
पौरुषात् कर्षकाध्यान्यं वणिजो धनमेव च राज्यलक्ष्मीं नृपा विद्यां सर्वसुखाश्रयां शूद्राभृतं सुधां देवा तापसा लोकमुत्ततं प्रापुर्यन्येऽप्यभिमतं पौरुषे नैव कर्मणा. On account of human effort, farmers acquired grain, merchants wealth, kings the glory of sovereignty, brahmanas knowledge, which is the seat of all happiness, shudras support, celestial beings nectar, and ascetics the highest world. Even others obtain the desired objects only by human action.
Yes, so our self-effort, our purushartha, is the engine for the accomplishment of anything in this world. Some of us are gifted more than others. Swamiji used to say, we are not all created equal. That's not true. Some of us are richer than others. Some of us are born with privilege. Some of us have more opportunity. Some of us have more talent or intelligence. But there's one way in which we are all equal. That is, we all get 24 hours in a day. Nobody is shorted and gets 23. Nobody is privileged and gets 25. So in your self-effort, what it boils down to, how will you allocate your time? How will you allocate your time? Will you set aside the time for your sadhana? Because that's what it takes. That's the root of it. And like anything else, the more you do it, the more skilled you become at it. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
अनवस्थिततर्केण अश्रद्धेन पुरुषेण किं कदा किञ्चित् कथं प्राप्तं फलं वद विमृश्य तत्. Has any fruit or advantage been obtained by a person who has no faith and has unsettled reasoning without finality? Having investigated it, tell me when and how.
So you have to think things through, apply proper reasoning. I'll give you a clear example. I was talking with a young man a while back. This is about 6 months ago. And he's an incredibly talented young man. He's a singer, he's a dancer, he's an actor, and he really wants to have a career as an artist. At the time, he had a job as an administrator in an academic environment. And he was saying, well, I just want to make enough money so I can then go do my art. And I said to him, that's faulty reasoning. Because if you spend all your time being an academic administrator, after a period of time, you will be a better academic administrator. The end is the means in a different form. If you want to be a successful singer, you must sing, because the end is the means in a different form. Oh, I mean, it's so obvious once you think about it. Discussion with someone who has a drinking problem. Jim, I don't know what the issue is. It's somewhere between the 5th and the 10th beer. I just lose control in there and I don't know what the problem is. And I say, no, your problem isn't the 5th beer. Your problem is the 1st beer. No one ever got drunk on 1 beer. That's not the point. If you never drink the 1st beer, you don't have to worry about the 5th or the 10th beer. Oh, proper reasoning. So our self-effort must be coupled with sound understanding from proper reasoning. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
Jim, I had a quick question.
Please.
So sound reasoning, what would you say happens when it encounters very deeply entrenched habits?
Sound reasoning when it encounters deeply entrenched habits. All right. How did the habit get in there in the first place?
I suppose lots and lots of mindless repetition.
The second word is the operative point.
Mindless.
No, repetition.
Repetitive, okay.
Yes, that's all a habit is.
Right.
You know, you look at the convolutions in the brain. They're like grooves. And those are, you know, we have these I love the word sanskara because like it's a scar, you know. So the way we do it is bit by bit work on changing a habit. Now here's a key. We are not healed by what we turn from, but by what we turn to. So for example, I'm talking with a fellow today, and he's endeavoring to quit smoking. He's 50 years old. He's been smoking since he was 14. It's really hard. Fell off the wagon this week and he had 2 cigarettes. And what I'm trying to encourage him to do is his smoking is a self-soothing device. And what he has to do is find something else. First of all, that's not something that's be destructive. Like don't eat ice cream every time you want it. You feel agitated. You know, you're going to put on 50 pounds. But there's something you can do to replace the negative habit. So Uday, is there something specific you're working on?
Maybe I can talk about it offline.
All right.
Thank you.
But you start with little baby steps, developing a new habit. Habits of thinking are frequently more difficult than habits of action.
Right.
If we get caught up in self-pity or regret over the past or catastrophizing the future, But there's no simple way. You've just got to purushartha, really work at it, thought by thought. This is where a mantra can be very helpful. Because when negative strains of thinking start to come, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. Don't go causation hunting, just go right to your mantra. And these will wither from lack of attention, the negativity and stuff. But absolutely, let's talk offline on it. Very good question. Very good question. All right, next verse.
क्वचित् फलविसंवादात् सर्वत्राश्वा सवर्जने विजानीयाद्दैव हतं तं स्वात्म रिपुरूपिणम्. On account of disappointment in obtaining the fruit in some cases, when there is the abandoning of confidence everywhere, one should regard that ill-fated or unfortunate one as their own enemy.
Yes. So I'm going to give you a slogan. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. One of the greatest enemies to successful yoga is perfectionism. This is hard, and you're not going to be very good at it at the beginning. You've got to be willing to do it badly in the beginning, but keep at it. If it's very important and it's very hard, of course you're not going to do it perfectly the first time. But many of us, if we aren't successful at the very beginning, we get disappointed and give up. I have no hesitation in telling you all, I have been a crappy yogi. I've made tons of mistakes, but I've been earnest. I keep at it. It's the very center of my life. And in the end, that's all it really takes. Any thoughts on this? True story. I have a very dear friend who's a Roman Catholic priest, and a good one. Very, very spiritual man. And several years ago, he had the 50th anniversary of his ordination. And he belongs to a religious order. So he was back at where that order is centrally located, the mothership, you might say. There's this big, huge basilica. There's a procession of all the people who've been priests for 25 years and the handful who've been priests for 50 years. And there he is with the incense and the organ music and the choir. And he was leading, he was in the procession, gold chasuble. And he says, X, I won't mention his name, you've broken every vow you ever made. How did you ever get here? But when he broke a vow, he told the truth, he confessed it, didn't keep it a secret. Worked hard on changing his behavior. He kept on keeping on. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly. Because if it's hard and you haven't done it before, you're not going to be very good at it in the beginning. Do not let perfectionism be an enemy of your sadhana. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
अतः पौरुषमाश्रित्य श्रद्धा सत्तर्कपोषितं श्रेयसां यन्मुखयत्तं साधनं तत् समाश्रयेत्. Therefore, resorting to human effort, supported by faith and proper reasoning, let one depend on that which is the most important means for accomplishing the highest good.
Yes. So, why should we have faith? We've talked about the 4 authorities, the pramanas. So, if you believe in this work and you've come to the conviction self-realization is real and it's possible for me. Now, I want to give you a wonderful quote from Gita. Krishna says, even a little bit of this yoga frees us from great fear. So just getting started improves our life immensely. Really does. Really does. So with proper reasoning, with faith in the Dharma, in the path. Now apply ourselves. Too frequently, when people go to an ashram, Swamiji used to talk about this when he was first up in Rishikesh at the Shivananda ashram. And there were a lot of guys who had taken sannyas and they really weren't doing much sadhana. They were just kind of hanging out. Swamiji was serious. He took it very seriously and he applied himself. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. Any thoughts? Next verse.
Tatra dushtam sadhananam vaichintram cha prithra vigdham teshu yat sarvatha sadhyam sadhye tadhi mukhakyakam. There, a variety of means for spiritual fulfillment have been observed separately. Among them, what is feasible or attainable in every way, that indeed should be accomplished or obtained foremost.
So, many practices are spread out before us. Some of them are not available to everyone. You're 40 years old. You get a notice in your email that you can join the Brahmachari training course if you have a college degree and you're under 32. You're out of luck. You're over 32. You have a family and children where you are, and you think, oh, if I could only go to the Himalayas. Well, you can't leave your family. Out of luck. What is it that's available to all of us? What's the means that you can do that's readily available? That's what Hemalek is going to give us. Going on.
तत्सु तर्कानुभूतेभ्यां व्यवस्थासु समारभेत् तत्ते सर्वं प्रवक्ष्यामि सावधान शृणुष्व तत्. Let one undertake that means for spiritual fulfillment quickly, having determined it by proper reasoning and experience. I shall tell you all that process. Hear that with attention.
Okay, so if you can find a means of knowledge and you have faith in it, faith in the teacher, faith in the possibility of the outcome, and it's available to you, it's within your abilities, go for it. And now Hemaleka says, I'm going to give you one that's very available. Let's see what she says.
Shreyastadhi vijaniya asmad bhuyo na shochati shoka sarvat ta eva syat drishyate sukshma yadrisha yacchokairanu sambhinnam na tachreyo hi sarvatha. Let one know that alone as the highest good, on account of which one does not suffer grief again. There can be sorrow quite from every quarter. This is seen through subtle perception arising out of investigation. That which is combined with sorrow alongside or contemporaneously is not at all the highest good.
So what should I put my effort into? And she says, if you're putting your effort into something that is laced with sorrow, in the end, why are you bothering? Why not put our efforts into something that delivers a permanent and unlimited good? Now, I think it's Nisargadatta Maharaj says something that sounds outrageous. Someone was questioning about happiness and sorrow, and he stopped them and said, they are the same thing. That seems perplexing because our experience is, well, happiness feels good and sorrow sucks. And he said, understand that if you seek happiness in the world, and that's a serious goal, you will experience sorrow. It's like heads and tails of a coin. I don't like coins that have tails. I want one that only has heads. No. A coin always has two sides, heads and tails. So everything in the world comes into existence, exists for a while, and then you lose it. Everything. Not saying there's not happiness, but it's always temporary. And the amount of work involved is oftentimes not worth the pleasure we get out of it. Bad economy. 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of joy. So she says, why not go for something that's always available, that has no conditions on it, doesn't cost anything, won't rot your liver, You don't even have to look your best. And has no end in how deep you can revel in it. An infinite goal. Why not go for that? Next verse.
Dhanam putrasthatha dara rajyam kosho balam yashah vidya buddhir darshanam cha deha saundarya sampadah sarvameta dadistarvat kala sarpa mukhistitham shokankur mahashaktir bijatma kataya sthitam kuta atyanti kashreya sadhanatvam samarhati. Wealth, sons, wife, sovereignty, treasure, strength, fame, learning, intelligence, appearance, body, the riches of beauty. All this is situated in the mouth of the serpent of time on account of impermanence. It is existing in the form of the very powerful seed of the sprout of sorrow. How does it deserve the status of being the means of the endless and the highest good?
Yes. So she has said more eloquently and poetically the same idea that I talked about. Everything in this world is swallowed up by the serpent of time. All relationships end in death or divorce. Whatever you have, don't worry, it will pass. Usually we say when someone's having a difficult time, don't worry, it will pass. But if you're having a wonderful time, don't worry, it will pass. Because it's the truth of everything in this world. Everything. But you will never pass. You are birthless and changeless and deathless, nityam, eternal. Chidananda Rupa, of the form of bliss consciousness. Why not go for that? Next one.
Ata para makam shreya etadvai mukhayatto bhavet evam dhanadi vishaye yada deyatva vipramah mohadeva samudbhuto mohako hi maheshwarah yo hi sarva jagat karta tasmat sarve hi mohitaah. Therefore, the supreme good can indeed be this alone above all. Thus, the error of acceptability in objects like wealth has arisen only out of delusion. The great Lord or Supreme Being, who is the creator of the entire universe, is indeed causing this delusion. Therefore, all are indeed deluded.
So, because of the Maya Shakti of the infinite, this world is deluded thinking that the way to get happy is to satisfy as many desires as possible, the end result is more desires. Look to your experience. At this point, Swamiji would probably say something like, if sex were satisfying, you'd only do it once. I was talking with another person recently, just shattered, broke up a love affair. So painful. Oh, I've been married for many years. I don't have that kind of sorrow. You have no idea what kind of sorrow there is for someone who's been married 50 or 60 years and the spouse dies. That's terrible pain. No escape. No escape. Next one.
Moha yat yalpa kopiha vidya samashrayat kanchideva na sarvansa yasmad vidya hi samita. Here, even an insignificant person like a magician deludes by resorting to a part of his lore. Only some people, not all, because that science is indeed limited.
So when you see a stage hypnotist or one of these jugglers, the Mayavi on the corner, who works some sort of a sleight of hand, some people are fooled, other people say, oh no, I saw. He only fools some of the people. But the Lord is the Mahamayavi, the great illusionist. Very few escape his illusion. Going on.
Alpa vidyam mana mayanam chapya nukranta janayatah mahadevam mahamayam ka samut kranta murhati. Since men have not gone beyond or surpassed even the person with trifling knowledge and deceitful, who is fit to surpass the great God who possesses that great power of illusion.
So, can any of us ever cross beyond Maya? Let's see. Going on.
Yohi loke alpa mayam cha janati pravidyaya samohan nigarta swastha sukham apnotya nashravam. He who indeed knows to obstruct or disable the trifling illusion of a magician by an opposite magical skill obtains imperishable happiness, coming out of the delusion and remaining at ease.
So, the yogi has a counter spell. There's this wonderful scene in the Harry Potter movies when they're playing, what's the game they play flying around on the brooms?
Quidditch.
Quidditch, yes. And remember when Harry's broom goes all crazy and they look at Snape and he's going, say, oh, he's putting a spell, when he was in truth putting a counter spell. So a yogi has a counter spell to defeat even the Lord's Maya. See what it is. Going on. Before we do, Punit, how many more verses? This is a rather long chapter, is it not?
Yes, we have quite a few left.
All right. It's 8. We'll do one more, and then we'll stop and have questions.
Evan vidyapi vidyatam nashritya tu mayinam na labhya sarvatha yavad prasadhya tu sarvatha. But even this kind of science or magical skill is not at all attainable without resorting to that conjurer and just without securing his favor in every way.
So we cannot counteract the spell of the Lord without endeavoring to get his favor. God's grace is basically what she's saying. In the end, even our self-effort, our purushartha, in and of itself is not enough. But we invoke God's grace through our efforts. Okay, we'll stop here. Anyone have questions or comments on tonight's material or anything else?
I want to understand more about grace. And so I don't know, maybe you said it or I heard somewhere that like the winds of grace are always blowing, but we have to put up our sail. And
that's beautiful. I didn't say that, but I'm going to shamelessly steal it.
I don't know where I heard it or where I read it, but so but grace is always blowing, but it has to be granted. Like, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
In our Christian work when we were children, or even in some Hindu families, we think of grace as a gift of God. That's its definitions. It's an undeserved gift. And we think that somehow it flows or is withheld. You're just trucking down the road like Paul of Tarsus, and all of a sudden, smack, God's grace. You see. So it's an undeserved gift, we say. Well, actually, that's a partial truth. The truth is the grace of God is a constant. What keeps us from experiencing the love, the joy, the mercy, the goodness of God? It's our ego. So how do we invoke God's grace? We work on abandoning self. One of my favorite images that comes out of the 12-step traditions, the author of what we call the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, uses this term, the sunlight of the Spirit. That's Bill Wilson's favorite image for God. So it's a wonderful image for God's love, God's grace. Now, the sun does not have the capacity to withdraw its light. Susali, if you walk out of your house in the morning, the sun doesn't say, I don't like her hairdo today, I'm not going to shine on her. It hasn't got that capacity. It shines because it's its nature. Likewise, it is the nature of the infinite to shine its light of grace everywhere. But if I walk outside with a paper sack over my head, no sun today, I feel grumpy. The sun is still shining, but I've got a bag over my head. So I don't need to beg the sun, oh, sun, please shine on me. Oh, I promise I'll become a monk if you shine on me. No, take the bag off. What is the bag? Being convinced that self and its various manifestations was what had defeated us. That's what Bill Wilson says. Very good yoga. So our job is to remove the doshas, the defects in our mind, various vasanas, or attachments or identifications. That's our job. Then someday, all of a sudden, oh, I see. I'm so filled with joy. God's grace. It was there all along. I just, for a moment, or maybe for good, got rid of the impediment, which was self in its various manifestations. Don't ever lose sight of the fact that the love of God, the grace of God, the bliss of God, the peace of God is a constant. It's always there. But I can veil my experience of it through egoism.
Thank you.
Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
God's not neurotic nor particularly capricious. God doesn't wake up one morning and say, I don't like the speed of light. I think I'll make it 188,000 miles per second today. Doesn't work that way. And never, ever, ever go into the mind state. Oh, am I being punished for something I did? Nonsense. Christian scripture says, the eye of God is too pure to behold iniquity. God can't even see your stupid little sinfulness. It's all ours. Good question, Susli. Anybody else have a question? All right, let's sit. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya.